What's up, gurus? It's your boy Pablo, wishing each and every single one of you amazing gurus a happy Wednesday. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Caesar's Commentaries, a legendary work that everybody should read, especially if you're curious about a very important figure in history. But before we dive into that, I just want to thank all of our followers, every single one of our amazing followers who are already doing that at Instagram and on X at AskAGuru app. We thank you. But if you're not already following us, be sure to do that at AskAGuru app, again on Instagram and on X. Make sure you subscribe here at AskAGuru TV. But most importantly, download the AskAGuru app from the app stores or sign up at askaguru.com to share your favorite music, books, movies, and TV shows. And I guarantee you will get the most amazing recommendations right back. And you're going to love it. We have the best algorithm in the world, and that is gurus, awesome people just like you. So be sure to do that. You are going to be in for a treat. And also, every week, we are selecting our Guru of the Week. That is a legendary person on the platform who's sharing amazing things that we're going to shout out, make videos about, and post all over our socials. Shout out to Quant Trade, who was already our Guru of the Week last week. And also, every week, we're selecting one artist that we think the whole world needs to know about and we need to share and celebrate. And last week was Brevin Kim out of Boston. These guys are legendary guys, and we've already had some interactions with them, and they are very cool. Be sure to listen to their music and support their new album Demo. And without further ado, we're going to be diving into today's video again on Caesar's Commentaries. So, before I dive into the work, a little bit about Julius Caesar. He was born in 100 BC, July 12th, and he was assassinated on 44 BC. So, he was assassinated in his 50s, but at that time, this guy had totally conquered the political world. He was named dictator for life and had pretty much ended the Roman Republic and had made it an empire. He was the emperor. And so it was quite the feat because Rome was already very strong, but he was one of the people that helped expand its territory. That's when Gaul and France firmly came into Roman domination. He went so far as up into England. And yeah, Julius Caesar was a force to be reckoned with, unlike any other. It's hard to think about people after, certainly before Alexander the Great was someone that you could mention. In fact, there's a funny story of him going and, in his words, he cried at the tomb of Alexander because he felt like he hadn't accomplished anything at the time that Alexander died. And he felt like he was the age that Alexander had died and that he hadn't accomplished anything yet. So clearly he was very ambitious. There are lots of funny stories about Caesar. There's one about him getting kidnapped by pirates and they demanded a ransom and he told them to increase the ransom. And he ended up actually, after being released on that high ransom he demanded, he went back, found the pirates, and had them executed. So this guy was a serious guy, and you know he had political ambitions. Came from a family that was had a strong name in Rome, but they were by no means the dominant family until he put them there. So Julius Caesar joined the military. He fought in Asia, and eventually he was one of the generals who they sent to Gaul to basically deal with the tribes that they were constantly uprising against them, and pretty much Caesar's commentaries are all about his time in Gaul and the different things that he was up to. And it's really interesting because it's written from his perspective, so it's like written by him, and the last chapter is written by a confidant of his because it was written after his assassination. But pretty much it's his story from his account, and it's really fascinating. A lot of interesting characters, a lot of really like mind blowing scenarios, and like basically you get the sense that Julius Caesar was energetic, he was bold, he was fearless, and he was really ambitious. And so one of the things that one of the parts that I really like are some of the parts that actually don't really necessarily involve him, where he's talking about some stories amongst his soldiers that give you an insight into the Roman psychology at that time. And so there's a part where he's talking about two centurions of his who were like basically rivals, and they were not in good terms just because they wanted to outdo one another in terms of honor, in terms of like being kind of like the alpha. And so there's a part where one of them, like basically in a battle, approaches, while being outnumbered, and he starts fighting, and he's like dispatching some of the people that he's fighting against, and he's doing good, but it's like it's perilous. Like basically, his own soldiers know that like, man, this guy might actually not survive, and so the rival of his basically sprints out, seeing him in trouble, in need of help, and joins the fight. And together they're able to fight with honor and make it back to the cheers of their fellow soldiers. And from that day forward, those two rivals had the most respect ever for one another. And so I thought that was a really interesting story. You could just see that, being a scene in a Ridley Scott movie. So that was an interesting part. And the other thing is, from Caesar's accounts, his mentality. That's another thing that you can glean from this book. Basically, he had no trouble dealing with a troublesome situation. If it was problematic, he realized that there was opportunity and problems, and so he would rush to put down different rebellions, and he was always shrewd. Julius Caesar, if I could describe him, he was the combination of a lion and a snake in his shrewdness and in his boldness. This guy was fearless, and man, he was a force. He was a force. Let's just put it like that. And so he puts down many different rebellions, one of them against a really interesting character called Vercingetorix. And there's a lot of just different twists and turns in the story, but basically he always seems to prevail through cunning and through sheer force of will. And that's one of the biggest takeaways, is that his will and his energy, his ability to march his army all over Gaul in order to deal with different situations was second to none. And another story that I think is really interesting is, there were times where his army kind of started to mutiny against him. They were just being worked to the bone, and they were starting to murmur against him. And basically, he gave them speeches where he was like, if you guys are going to murmur against me, I'm going to take the 10th Legion, which was like his favorite legion, and I'm going to handle the situation with just them alone. And after that, like the entire army would fall in line, and they'd be like, no, Caesar, like, no, we are with you. We are with you. We'll march to the ends of the earth for you. And so I thought that was a really interesting part of the story. He did that a number of times, and every time it would work. He was able to inspire loyalty amongst his soldiers by playing them against one another for honor's sake. And it sounds like the 10th Legion, they were ride or die for him. So I really think that's a very interesting aspect to all of this. He was a master statesman. He was energetic. He was bold. He was decisive. There's the account of him going crossing the Rhine by building a bridge, and then like the basically the locals along the Rhine, they were like, what's going on? Like these guys are building a bridge, and then as soon as they built the bridge, they demolished it. Basically saying like, guys, we're not playing around. Like we will not retreat. We are here and we mean business. And that's a famous story that's always, talked about in when it comes to Caesar. And so there are plenty of stories. This is a page turner. It really is. You can gain a lot of insights into what made the Romans so, respected and feared. They weren't the most, imposing, but they were so fierce in their love of honor and duty, and they fought together in cohesion, and they were just tough. They were tough. They could recover from defeat like no other. And they were they loved honor. That's the one thing, is that they they would suffer hardships if they felt like it would win them honor. They had no trouble doing that. And so Caesar would go from one situation where there's trouble to the next tirelessly. And I think that that was really the key quality of his, is he never tired to go through things for the sake of honor and to prove that, you know his ambition wasn't just ambition. He was willing to do whatever it took in order to achieve fame and his goals and power. And so we all know the story of him crossing into Rome and saying the die is cast. That's also a really interesting part in this story. And even after, there's the time where he goes to Egypt. He continues dealing with situations everywhere he goes. He's like, I have no trouble like dealing with craziness. And eventually, it seemed like he had accomplished so much that he just totally achieved so much concentration of power, to the point where even his friends, they were they were jealous of him. And he essentially was like, had all power. He was named dictator for life, and he was very popular amongst the Roman people. But amongst the aristocrats, they realized how much power they'd lost, including the Senate. And so he was assassinated on the Ides of March. But he was deified. That was that they gave him the honors of deities while he was living and after he was assassinated. And to this day, he is a one of the most important figures in history. We have all heard of, Caesar, but also other European monarchs adopted that name. Kaiser, Tsar, all those come from his name. So this guy had a huge impact. And if you're really curious about who he was and you want to get an insight into his mentality and also the Romans, what made them such interesting people in history, I highly recommend this book. It was one of my favorite reads. So yeah, I hope you enjoy that. I'm always looking for more recommendations, so be sure to give me some great recommendations. Do that via Ask a Guru, and also remember, share with me your favorite music, movies, TV shows. Share that with the world. Ask a Guru is the platform to do that, and you will be celebrated. And also be sure to like this video. Again, subscribe here at Ask a Guru TV. We've got only the greatest stuff coming your way. And also download the app, sign up, follow us at AskAGuru app on Instagram and on X. Stay tuned. We've got so much great stuff coming your way. Love you, gurus. Peace.